The hard drive is one of the most important pieces of functionality in the machine, next to the CPU probably, because this is where our data goes. And a lot of times as an A-plus technician, you're going to be called on to deal with hard drive issues. And so in this video, I just want to talk about some hard drive basics. First of all, if you were to take an old hard drive and open it up, don't do this with a new one, by the way, but open the thing up and look around in there, you'll notice that it looks like, this little thing here looks like about the size of a CD or a little smaller, but it is highly polished metal. It is very rigid, and notice some pieces and parts here. First of all, the disc itself is called a platter. Now, if you're old enough to remember, or if you can go find an old person, say 50 years old, something like that, then they can tell you about records that we used to have. 33 1/3 RPM records, 45 RPM records. These are things were called platters, as a matter of fact, and they worked exactly this way. This little arm here will move back and forth this way, if you see the way the mouse is moving here, and it will read different tracks that go around this disc, okay? And this little copper wire out here is riding just on a little cushion of air, just barely microscopically above this disc, and it is either reading or encoding little electromagnetic pulses onto that disc, and these are seen as zeros and ones. This is how all of our data is stored on a hard drive. Now, the disks, or the platters themselves, are actually stacked, and so this one shows 4 platters, okay? And notice you have 4 actuators. Some of these can read top and bottom, and this is how we're cramming, 500, 700 gigabytes, 1.5 terabytes in these really small packages, because we're simply stacking these disks. But now you can see these disks are going to have to spin pretty quickly, and they're going to have to be, very high tolerance, that they're going to have to stay straight, they can't wobble, all sorts of things. They can't be scratched or damaged, and so this is why hard drives are physically susceptible to bumps and knocks and drops and all that sort of thing, okay? So that's the pieces and parts you need to know about. That's the physical part of a PC. Now, you will also, this middle thing here, you'll hear it referred to as a spindle, and that is telling you that this is one hard drive. Now, it's one hard drive made up of 4 platters, but it's still one hard drive, okay? Now, let's think about logically. If I've got a hard disk, I need to somehow separate that hard disk into identifiable regions, and when we format the hard drive, that is exactly what happens. And this is how it gets divided up. We slice this thing into pieces, okay? And so you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 sections of this hard disk, and those are called sectors. Notice B is a geometric sector, it's all of them, and C is a particular track. Now, if you notice these concentric circles around that platter, right? And you could count these from inside out, and you can see you got a certain number of tracks. Well, if I know what track I recorded data on and what sector it's in, then I have an address for where that data is. And that is exactly what the hard disk is doing. And so a cluster, notice, here's a sector, one of these pie slices is a sector. A cluster, you see here D, is a group of those sectors, right? All on the same track, okay? Now, when we defrag our hard disk, it simply means that we've placed a piece of a file here, a piece of a file up here on this one, a piece of a file over here. And it would be much better when we read this, as that disk physically spins, to just drag that actuator across all of this and read it all at once. Be much faster than reading this, spinning it around, then reading this, spinning it around, reading this, spinning it around and reading this, right? And so that is what defragmentation does. It puts everybody back together in contiguous sectors and on the same tracks and all that sort of thing. So that's what's happening to the hard drive logically. Now, there's another aspect of hard drives you could see on the exam, and that is the faster a hard drive will spin, then the more data we can read to it and write from it in a shorter amount of time. It just makes sense. It's a physical limitation, right? And so you'll hear a little piece of nomenclature, if you will, about hard drives, and it has to do with the RPMs, or the revolutions per minute. It simply means how fast will this particular hard drive spin? Well, kind of the standard's 5400 RPMs now. The very first IBM PC that came out was somewhere around 1200 RPMs. It was hopelessly, pitifully slow. But now the standard, if you got like a low-end desktop or laptop, your disk drive's probably going to be spinning around 5400 RPMs. 7200 RPMs is better. You will notice a difference in performance because, again, the disk drive is kind of where everything bottlenecks. It's the slow piece of equipment in most computers. You can also get disks with 10,000 RPMs and 15,000 RPMs, and the faster these things get, generally the faster the performance that you're going to notice. Now keep in mind there are other things that we need to be concerned about with hard drives. Seek time, data throughput, all this sort of thing, but don't worry about that. They're not going to go that deep on the A+ exam, but just understand generally a 10,000 RPM disk is going to be able to move and store data faster than a 5400 RPM disk, simply because that little actuator is being dragged across more data every minute. So anyway, that's some basic information about hard drives. I hope all that helps you to understand what's going on with hard drives, and a lot of this will get you through a lot of the questions about hard drives on the exam.